Good evening. This is Paul here from Volaticus, a aerial production company that has a interest in aviation and flight simulation. Welcome on board. We're going to do a flight today in the flight factor Boeing 767 in X-Plane 11. My favourite aircraft at the moment, from Ontario in California to Sacramento International. It's a decent length flight. I've got San Francisco as an alternate for that. We're more or less set up, ready to go. Just want to run through the navigation route with you. So just bring up ForeFlight here. So we're going to depart Ontario on a POM 9 departure through the Echo Hotel Foxtrot VOR. So it's quite a simple route. That's through Buck, Tubed, and then EHF. And then the Victor 23 will take us all the way up to Sacramento. And looking to then go direct from the Sierra Alpha Charlie VOR direct to Sacramento. Just having a quick look at the weather. So Ontario, weather 22 minutes ago, light and variable wind. That gives us a choice of direction. It was favouring 08 left, but as we're flying westerly, probably going to change that to 26, probably 26 right, because that at least gets us flying in the direction we want to be heading, which is to the Pomona VOR initially. So just have a look at the map again and click on Ontario, show on map, and zoom in a little bit. And I'm just going to put the aeronautical information that will then display. So 26 right will take us in the right direction towards the Pomona VOR. So we'll set that up. I had actually set it up with 08 left, but as things change, we obviously have to be ready to adapt. The arrival into Sacramento, I have not determined that yet. We'll do that en route. Okay, so let's go into the aircraft and take a look. Okay, now the first thing I've done, this is a night flight, so I've set the lighting up within the aircraft. And it's quite important at night to customise yourself to the lighting. So it's worth having about half an hour at least before you actually will depart to set everything up. So what I've done is just set the panel lights up and the floodlight as well. Could actually bring that down a little bit now. Just go through the CDU with you. So as I say, I had set this up for a 08 left departure. That is now going to change. So what we'll do is we'll run through and make those changes. So if we go into the departure here, departure page, we've got the POM 9 still, but we're going to go from 26 right and then execute that. And just a warning there. I'll attend to that in a moment. And for the arrival into Sacramento, there's nothing yet. I will determine that when we're in flight. We've got a bit of time. So let's just have a quick look at the legs themselves. So we've going for flight level 360. I've done that in SimBrief already. And here is our route more or less. And what I'll do is step through this in a moment, have a look on it on the navigation display. Okay, so that seems okay. What I will do is, using ForeFlight again, I have the POM 9 departure set up, which corresponds with what we're doing here today. So let's just activate that. That might actually result in some discontinuities. Let's have a look. That seems okay. So let's have a look at see where it's heading us initially. Just zoom out a little bit. And then we can step through. So Delno is the first point, then Pond, and Pixie, Leighton, Frame, top of descent, CZQ, Oxvev, I don't know how you pronounce some of these, Baron, Lapon, etc, etc, etc. And then into Sacramento. So one thing I didn't see on there is a top of climb, which is a bit unusual. I'm not really sure why that's not appeared on there. We did get a warning when we put the departure point in. There was a VNav performance issue. I'm just going to quickly check on ForeFlight. Look at the departure options from Ontario. And we shouldn't have any problem flying the POM 9 departure. I just want to compare that with the legs that we have. So we have Delno as the first point after departure, which is quite a long way up here, so this doesn't make a lot of sense. What I can do, of course, is to override that and put the other points in manually, which I think I'm going to do. So start with BUCCK, Buck, and then TOOBD. So one thing that amuses me a little about these systems is these systems, the aircraft systems, are really ancient compared with sort of modern technology that we're used to nowadays, so it's a bit frightening at times. EHF, and then we can connect that up, execute that. Okay, that's looking better. That is looking better. So if we step through, so departing from Ontario, we'll be flying westerly to Buck, tubed, EHF, Delno, Pond. Okay, that's, I'm a lot more happy with that now. Okay, so we can just put that on the progress page for the moment. Everything else is being set in here. I will just going to run through this because we've made a slight change. So just going through everything. So set up Ontario as our starting point. The routes, Ontario to Sacramento. What it is missing is the runway now. So 26 rights will go in there. And that will also set up the engine management for the length of that runway, the conditions there. 5 degrees flap, 11 degrees is the temperature, 20 degrees centre of gravity gives a trim of 3.9. All the V speeds copied over to my airline form, and have a look in the comments if you'd like a copy of that. Be very happy for you to download it and try it and let me know how you get on with that. So just coming back to ForeFlight a moment. Okay, bear in mind ForeFlight's not going to have any bearing on the flight today. So the only thing I've just noticed, actually, POM is an intermediate point, so I haven't added that yet, so let's do that now. POM. In you go. And it's going to ask, the reason this screen comes up is where there's a discrepancy. In other words, there's other stations with that name. So I'm just going to check. It's 110.4, so it is the top one. Normally it will list the one nearest to your other points, but you do need to check, and that's part of the reason for stepping through the route. Okay. Also, if this was in South America or something, it would probably say insufficient fuel, but you don't really want to use the that safety net built into the aircraft systems to determine that. So everything else looks good. Let's just step through and into SAC. So I'll determine the actual arrival point when we actually get there. Okay, back to page 1. We can set the mode now back to map. And the scale, I'll just bring that down slightly. What we will do is we'll depart, and we'll as soon as we've reached the 1,000-foot point, acceleration point, we'll probably fly runway heading until that point and then intercept the navigation. As I say, that's typically what happens during these flights, that they may not want you to start the departure procedure until a certain point, so we'll assume that. What else? Okay, just going up to the top, I'm just close the CDU down for the moment. All the hydraulics are off, yaw dampers are off. We're running on ground power. Something very important to do, which I forgot yesterday when I was doing a quick flight, was everything went cold and dark the moment I pushed back because I hadn't set the APU up, which is something that probably should use checklists a little bit more than I do. So APU can stay off for the moment. Coming down here, lighting, we've got logo lights, we have position lights, flight door unlocked, no other lights on. Fuel is on, 15.4 tons is off our fuel for the flights. The cargo heaters will remain off until we have pushed back and started up, but window heats are on, passenger signs on, we've already loaded by the way. The landing altitude is 26 feet, so we can go ahead and set that now. So 30 is the nearest. I just want to make sure, before we set that, to make sure the doors are all closed, which they are now, and then the pressurization system can start. I'm going to lock the flight deck door now at this point, so normally would be when the passengers load. We've got air running through the ground air supply. It's going through to the passenger cabin, and they are on 21 degrees, so everyone should be happy there. We have the altimeter Ontario 3014 sets, and just check against the airfield elevation 944. So we're obviously the elevation will vary on the airport, but that's certainly within limits and quite a reasonable figure, so we can verify that that's okay. Altimeter 2 set of 2992. Brakes set to rejected takeoff. Decision height we can set en route when we know which approach we're going to be using. I've set the ATIS up for Ontario, so we could listen to that now.
Ontario Intl information Zulu 600 Zulu weather. Wind light and variable. Visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 3,500 few. 25,000 broken. Temperature 9. Dew point 5. Altimeter 3011. Arriving runway 08 right. 08 left. Departing runway 08 right. 08 left.
Zulu it is.
Advise on initial contact.
So one thing
you
you
have
notice,
Zulu.
the wind's light and variable, which means that there's no particular favourable runway from a meteorological perspective, but ATC may want us to depart on the easterly runway. We would request not to, because we're going out to the west, and at night it's probably fairly quiet from this airport, so hoping we would normally be given permission to do that. Let's just continue the scan down here. So the trim, the value from the form is 3.9. It's set at 4 at the moment, but I can't adjust that at the moment because all of the hydraulics are off. So that will be set when after we've started the engines. The transponder's on standby. That will go to TARA just before takeoff. And also flaps currently up in accordance with safety regulations. They'll be set when we are pushed back, engine started, when we're clear of people and clear of the terminal. Okay, let's go ahead and set this up ready for our departure. So the very first thing I'm going to do after all the spiel about it is to start the APU and put the APU generator and air bleed on, and then we can come down, have a wee look at the secondary screen, see the APU EGT rising there. So We'll give that a chance to warm up. Back to the top of the screen, so all the hydraulics come after start, as do the engine generators. I'm going to stick the red light on because we're going to be pushing back fairly shortly. Passenger signs are all on, window heats are on, the cargo heat will come on after start, as will the engine air bleed feeds. But first thing to do is check that we have good pressure. So that click means the APU is on now. I'm just going to disconnect from external power. It's always grit my teeth a little bit because there's occasionally things don't work quite as you'd expect in this aircraft, but on this occasion they did. So we're now running purely on APU, so we could be pushing back any point. Just going to switch to an outside view, and you see the blue pushback truck, the one that is part of the this Boeing 767 package, is there ready. I do have the chocks in there, be releasing those in a moment. So we're going to be setting this up for engine start. Got the red light on, turn the packs off for the moment, and back to the cockpit, and we can commence the pushback process. So to the ground, just make sure the brakes are set, which they are. Now these brakes are powered by the hydraulics, and so we've got to be really careful to make sure that our hydraulics are running before we try to engage the brakes or anything else that uses hydraulics. So I'm just going to take the chocks off, knowing parking brakes are set. We can remove the high pressure unit in GPU and just make sure our doors are closed when we push back from the gate. That's fantastic. And as the truck is already there, all I need to do now is remove the brakes and push back. So the nose will be going to the left. It will not, actually, it will be going to the right as we're looking at it here. So what I'll do is I'm just going to give myself a slightly better view here. And we can go up and start one. Okay, looking for 15%. There it is. Good light up. Keep an eye on what we're doing here. Funny, you become the captain, the first officer, and the pushback guy. It's all fun though. Okay, that should do us into the cockpit. And brakes set. And just check, okay, starter switch is off so we can start bringing some of the hydraulics. Electric generator for engine 2. I did say engine 1 earlier, do apologise. And the air bleed from engine 2. And just a quick check, and everything seems to be stable on that. So what we could do is we have the hydraulics on, we could actually ask the pushback truck to leave. So that warning that you hear is partly to do with the fact that the hydraulics on the brakes are not holding. So let's just have a look where they are. So he's gone off now. So what we need to do is start the other engine. I've had this before. Let's go ahead and start that other engine. 15, good light up. GT rising to the yellow. N1 starting to spool up. We should see the, hopefully see the EGT start dropping. It went quite high actually, I'm a little concerned by that. And the N1's spooling up there. What the hell? I do not know what happened there. Something very, 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 very weird happened there. See if we can just set the brakes. So I don't know whether that was a problem with the joystick, the throttle control I've got here, or what, that I couldn't control that. But now the engine does look like it's stable and the values are as you might expect. This is the reason I always say don't set the auto throttle. And it wasn't set, but something like that could happen if you inadvertently invoked the toga control. So let's get the hydraulics set on there. We can set the yaw dampers, we can set the cargo heats. Christ, right, that's working again. It seems to be the thing to do. Seems to forget what it's been doing before. Come on, gotta be kidding me. Okay, we're back now. This is one of the worst flights I've been on so far, unfortunately. Right, taxi lights can come on. I think I would actually be just saying to the first officer at this point, call the stairs, I'm going home. So let's switch the packs on. And where are we? Because that aircraft was all over the place. Okay, well, we're near the taxiway. As I say, left engine was going absolutely crazy, absolutely no idea why. But well, hopefully the rest of the flight will be a bit smoother than that. Okay, so one of the things learning points about something like that is that it's amazing how quickly it can throw you with your other duties. So you could forget to set the trim, you could forget to set the flaps. I think I've set 5 degrees. I'm just going to watch it because it's almost impossible to see that from the captain's side. Yeah, it seems to be holding there. Sometimes a little thing can really throw you in the cockpit, so it's absolutely vital that you prioritise. I mean, when I was doing my flight training, it's always about just fly the effing plane, because that's ultimately, you know, something small, a light not working, or just something trivial, you spilt coffee on yourself, and you end up crashing the plane because your attention was diverted. So it's always a good learning exercise. Let's have a look at where we are. Setting the altitude 6,500, and that is because on the flight we've got to be, just bring up the CDU. Well, the initial departure said we had to be below 7,000 actually, but I think because I've added in some extra routes there, we can we're actually using slightly different routing. So what I'll do there is I'll put in, we'll take that up to 10,000 initially. There are some mountains to the north of Ontario which we need to get above, but we should be well clear of that by the time we take our northerly turn. Heading will be runway heading. I've set heading mode at the moment. It's defaulted to 348, but I'll set that when we're on the runway. The speed is the V2 speed, and our initial departure climb up to 1,000 feet AGL will be V2 plus 15, so we're looking for 165, 18 degrees climb. Auto throttle leave off, as I say. I don't know what was going on with my throttle earlier, but That's maybe a good example. If you engage toga and you've got the auto throttle armed, that could really ruin your day. I didn't, so I really don't know what happened there, but maybe it's the ghost of auto throttles came back to haunt me. Just close down the CDE for the moment. Objective takeoff is set on the auto brakes, everything else is set ready to go. So at this stage I would normally turn to ForeFlight, and then I can zoom in to the airfield level, find out where we are, center us on that. So on the November 1 taxi, I think we're probably just on the grass actually, so I'm just going to continue to the November and then take a left to go down to 26 right. So let's set up the second screen so that we can monitor the hydraulics, and we can start taxi. Parking brake off. So I think, despite how it's depicted on ForeFlight, this is actually all tarmacked over. I think it was a service road I ended up going over onto. So just checking the hydraulic controls as we taxi it out. Normally we check brakes. They seem to be working okay. So one thing I do need to do is to go up and switch our APU off. So we don't need that anymore. That wastes fuel as well. So we should be on the November taxiway, which just checking ForeFlight, see we are. We can also see the little signs to confirm that. So a relatively short route down to the 26 right threshold. So the warning light, the APU generator off, is because we have switched the generator off and the APU is still running. As you can see, 639 EGT, but that should drop very soon and then the light will go out, so no worries there. So let's just test the controls. So banking left, back to the middle, banking right, back to the middle, left, climb, climb, centre, climb, bank right, climb, descend rather right, into the middle, descend, and descend left turn. And as I correct my position on the taxiway, you can see the rudder movement as well working correctly, and just centre, make sure that's okay. The APU now spinning down, as you can see, message gone. So the other thing we can do is have a look at a wing view, and one of the things I will do is stick the wing light on and quick check where we are, go back to that wing view, and we can just test the spoilers, something a pilot typically won't be able to do, well, in that he won't be able to jump up and go down and check. So let's switch the packs off departure. This is part of the departure procedure. Starters to continuous. The white strobe light on. Very important to divide your attention. We can switch the departure lights on. Taxis off. It's 26 right threshold. And we can switch TARA mode onto the transponder. So Enunciator shows the packs are off, so we'll be checking for inbound flights. It's nice and gentle. So the last thing we'll do before we get going is I'm going to just set the heading control. So heading mode is selected, and just bring that back to our runway heading. Okay, we have flight director should be on, VNav should be on, heading selected is on. I will fly it manually to 1000 and then engage the autopilot, but I think we're ready to go. So at this point the auto throttle can come on and the toga screw can be clicked. So that toga would normally be on the throttle. V1 approaching, rotate nice and gently, positive rate gear up, and then to 18 degrees, and we should be maintaining 18 degrees, about 165 or a little bit above that, and looking for height above ground, just approaching 1000, so anticipating it, just start lowering the nose now. And engage the autopilot. So that should fly our runway heading. And we should be able to go back there. First stage of flap up. Packs can come on. Approaching second stage of flap, and we're just going to assume that we've been given a turn, a vector, to intercept our initial track, so 270 for example, and we can arm the lateral navigation as well if we've been given clearance to then fly it en route. So up to the speed of 240 initially. The scene was absolutely beautiful at night. So that's a slight left turn to inset that track. See, I started my flight training in Los Angeles area. It's an absolutely incredible place to learn to fly. Absolutely nothing like it. And that was with everything flyable. That was a school that was specialised in training commercial pilots or people flying for fun in Long Beach, Doherty Field. So I'm using ForeFlight for situational awareness as much as anything, which I have found to be invaluable. This aircraft has a navigation display, but it's nowhere near as information laden as the ForeFlight display. Also means I can zoom in or out on the ForeFlight screen to give a different view, and it has the ability of overlaying different data on there, so I could, for example, can bring in the US VFR sectional and see the mountains that we're about to cross. And with that in mind, let's give ourselves a further climb to 16,000. And let's see what's going to happen here. It's gone into alt hold because we were near 10,000, so I need to click VNav to then get it to continue climbing. It's one thing that you find with these systems, if you've flown simple aircraft with the simple autopilot, that sometimes you set something in the one of the boxes like the altitude and nothing happens. It's because it allows you to preset the next step. So it's just a culture difference moving out of simple aircraft. So we're just above 10,000 now in the climb, and we can go up and we can turn off our logo wing light. We can take the landing lights off. We could also turn off the seatbelt sign if you want. I'm going to keep it on because we're going to be crossing some mountains and could get some turbulence, so I'm going to keep it on to where a bit further on the flight. Let's just turn off the VFR sectional. The other thing I can do on ForeFlight is turn the aeronautical map down to very basic information, just our flight and key cities. And for that you can then click an overview and just see bare minimum detail, which is really useful. Okay, we'll assume we've been passed over and we've been given a climb to 24,000 or flight level 240, as we like to say in the IFR world. One difference is that as we get through 18,000 we switch to flight levels, but if you've been cleared above that you can actually switch to standard pressure 2992, and the annunciator, see in the corner of my eyes come up, and click magic screw number 2 will clear that. Quick check up the top here, APU's off, there's no warning lights on, which is great. Our cargo heat's all on. It's looking good. Pressurization is as you would expect. So our landing altitude only 30 feet, 26 feet at Sacramento. We could take the air bleed off. It doesn't make a blind bit of difference really at this point in the flight, but as we're not using the APU at the moment, we'll just switch that off. Okay. And the other thing we can do is just zoom out on the navigation display. You can see the top of the climb there. I went for 360. Probably will end up updating that. Probably go to 400. But it does struggle a bit as you get near flight level 400. So there's no immediate urgency to be doing that. Into the ForeFlight map on the aircraft and just zoom in a little bit. So we should be flying over the mountain region just by virtue of that there's no one living there. Yeah, there you go. So all the areas blank on the map are generally mountains in the LA area. Real estate's so expensive, isn't it? Just a quick check. All the flaps are up. This is after takeoff checks, not something to be doing at flight level 240. Gears up. Yeah, that's fine. I should have the CDU open as well, really. So one of the more useful pages is the progress page, because that gives us some ETAs, not least at our destination. You generally have to add about 10 minutes to the figure here, because it really does not consider sort of taxi time or you slowing down really for the approach so much. So just leveled at flight level 240. Let's go up now to 360, which is our initial given height. As I say, nothing will happen until you switch VNAV or flight change. It'll be VNAV in this case. and then we can continue setting that figure. This is obviously in accordance with the ATC instructions. And if you go to page 2, gives us indication of how the winds are treating us. Not too well, actually, if I've got to be honest with you. 62 knot headwind. Not brilliant, really. But, you know, in sim brief, it's all of that's taken into account in terms of working out the fuel calculations. Also, we've got our fuel estimate for the next waypoint, which is tubed. We're just coming up upon that now. So 12.9. Just having a look in the top, 13.3 is our fuel value. So we're slightly above that estimate, which is good. And the next one, 11.2, it's estimating at EHF. And I've actually made a note of that on the plan from SimBrief. EHF was estimated at 11.4, and it's saying 11.3 here. Sorry, 11.5 has just moved up a line. And I suspect it'll actually be nearer 12 than 11. So it's good to just check your fuel usage en route. Make sure that you are not seriously under or even slightly under the estimates, because they're fairly conservative. And not so much for this sort of flying where, you know, you're flying across many suitable airports. So if you're going across the ponds, across an ocean, then obviously you need to start factoring in things like point of no return, that kind of thing. It's our first class view. Slightly noisier is our view from coach economy. I do like the fact you hear the difference. Obviously hear some roar from the engine there, which you don't hear in first class. Although I must say this is the best seat in the house. So just passing flight level 300 at this point. And then if we want to see what the optimal flight level would be for our flight, we can actually click on the cruise page, and it says optimal is between 360 and 400. So we could get up to 360 and then step up to 400. One thing about flight levels is that when you get above a certain height, and I can't remember what the exact figure is, that they go up not in 1,000 foot increments but 2,000 foot increments. So in theory, and that's per direction as well. So if 360 was valid in this direction, it would be 380 in the opposite direction, and then 400 would be the next available flight level to us. That is from the 90s when I was flying commercially. That may well have changed, and may be different in the US, I don't know, but we'll assume if you step up from 360 it'll be up to 400. But you find as you're getting higher, aircraft struggles a little bit more to climb. Not so bad at the moment, but we're probably level for 360 for a time. Okay, now I feel there's not really very much to do at this point, which normally means there's things that I should be doing that I haven't. So what we can do is just have a look at the weather for Sacramento. This is weather in accordance with ForeFlight, and the figures from ForeFlight are meant to be live values, so I trust that more than anything. The figures from X-Plane rather are also meant to be live, but they may not be as up to date as those from ForeFlight. So wind is northeasterly, northeasterly, 3-4, very light. No weather really to worry us about. So we could do a visual approach if we wanted to. So in that regard, click on the runways tab. Shows you the runway that's favoured there. So 2 knot crosswind is fine, 3 knot headwind or a tail is fine, but actually we do want to be landing northerlies. So 3-4 right or left would be fine. Don't think there's a lot of difference between those two really. So have a look at the procedures. And actually I'm just going to turn the seatbelt sign off now, let the passengers roam and go to the bathroom, whatever they do. Just a quick check, everything else looking okay in there. No warning messages to be worrying about. So, having a look at the arrival into Sacramento, so that's the star. This is probably not the best view actually, because this is asking us to choose something. What we're doing is the route is being planned to the SAC VOR, but it might be we pick up on one of these approaches, one of these arrivals, and if you click on the approach we can then have a look at the ILS procedure there, and probably we'll just do that. And generally speaking, X-plane you have a lot of freedom to make that decision. In reality you don't. Well, not in airline flying anyway. So we've got ILS 3-4 left we could use. So if you want the instrument approach, that'll be the one to use. Let's have a quick look at that. Okay. Fairly straightforward really. So from the Sierra Alpha Charlie VOR, an intercept to the localizer and then the approach from there couldn't really be any simpler. You see from the airport diagram it's a really simple airport layout as well, just two quite long runways with a terminal in between. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I am going to click a button to add that chart to my charts page, and if I close that one, go back to charts, actually show you all of the other plates that I've got in there at the moment, including some which I don't need anymore, so I am going to get rid of those. So that's the Yuma YNL, get rid of those, I'm not using those. Well, Ontario we don't need anymore, so that can go. So what I'll also like to do is to add the taxi diagram for Sacramento while we've got a moment. So that would be under the airports section and then airport diagram, and then the button near the top right added, and once that's in there, what it does, it allows you to swipe on the tablet to go between information, but it's grouped. So if we had 2 ILS approaches, for example, it would allow us to swipe between those. What happened there, when I swipe to the right, it's quite difficult to do actually. It's actually showing me the additional pages to do with the first page I was on. So there's sort of additional notes about the taxi diagram. I think there is a way you can actually switch between these plates as well. Yeah, no, that works. No, it doesn't. Yeah, it's a bit temperamental. What I will do is let's get the ATIS set up, and we'll set up the ILS as well. Stick it on the legs page as well. We're just approaching the Echo Hotel Foxtrot VOR. So first thing is the ATIS. That's 126.75. Okay, and switch over to that. Now, there's a danger it might pick up another ATIS en route, which is no big disaster. And the other thing we can do is set up the ILS, which is 111.1. Oh, 1.1, and the course is 348. Okay. And I will, even though we're quite a long way out, I will set the ident button, and again we may pass other ILS en route which are nothing to do with Sacramento and get an ident from that. So generally speaking, you probably wouldn't want to leave the ident off, but we'll leave that on for the moment. The other thing we can do is have a look at the decision height here. And for the ILS 34 left, 224 or 200 for category C, D. So what I'll do is actually set the decision height. I'm going to add 50 to that 224, so about say 280. And that's simply because of altimeter error. So we're at level at flight level 360 at the moment. And that 260 or 280 is now, see in the attitude display, decision height 280. Not expecting any weather, so we should be okay. So I forgot to make a note of the fuel value at EHF, but we're on 12.2, so it must have been more than that, and we're estimating 11.4, so we're probably a full tonne above what our estimates were. Next one is Lima Indian November 9.6 according to the SimBrief plan, and so we'll look out for that when we get there. There's Lynn. It's almost at Sacramento, so it's kind of a bit superfluous. I tend to choose fuel values at VORs for some reason. Not any particular logic behind that. So at EHF we picked up on the Victor 23, and that takes us all the way up to Sacramento. So it's probably a good point to stick in the instrument approach, because we haven't set anything. We just go to the Sierra Alpha Charlie VOR, and then that's the end of the route really. So we need to make sure we're on the arrivals for Sacramento. Very easy to inadvertently have the arrival, so your departure point. See what options we have here. So let's just have a look. I wondered why I wasn't seeing the runways on there, and that is that there's so many airports in Sacramento area. I've ended up putting the wrong one in there, which is really embarrassing. What I will do is I will, as we're going to SAC anyway, so you can see SAC, and that's the start of the procedure, and at that point we really will be using the ILS. So yeah, Sacramento International SMF. KSAC is another Sacramento based airport, not the one we wanted unfortunately, but fairly close. But as we're going to the SAC, in fact I'm pretty sure the airport is co-located, so we've got the TACAN there. Oh, there it is, KSAC, it's the executive. So it's a little bit nearer, but actually the SAC VOR is really what we want. I don't really want to go into the, I don't really want to go in here and change anything, because I think it will just reset everything, which is not exactly what I'd want to do. What we could do, I'm not going to do this, is create a second route, which will be K Ontario to KSMF, and then I can switch to that without affecting the original route. I'm going to leave that for the moment though. I think we're okay. So just having a quick look at the executive. What we can do is put that full screen. And the airport diagram. So yeah, it's probably get in there okay. It'll be a bit of a struggle, but it's really intended for GA and business jets, I think. Aircraft of this weight would struggle into there. They're certainly getting out of there. Okay, no worries there. So it's funny because I've got the weather is KSMF. I must have just had a bit of an oversight. Everything else is the same, yeah. It's just type it in CDU, just got the wrong place. Probably a sackable offence in most places, but that's why I do this for fun. Okay, just maybe spend a bit of time talking about ForeFlight. So I use this quite a bit for airline flying in X-plane. It's both an excellent planning tool, but also a navigational aid whilst you're in flight. And there are 3 levels of subscription. This is the ForeFlight Mobile app. First level is the basic one, which you're currently looking at. It gives you everything you need really to conduct these IFR flights. So what's the difference with the next level up? Well, first of all, it's about double the price. So the basic one is $100 a year, and the next level up is $200. And what that does is it gives you synthetic vision, and I can show you that now, but I haven't. The subscription is not active. So what this does is shows you a preview of your attitude. that you get that for free. That's not a problem. But what you don't get is the obstacle database, and that includes things like mountains, ground obstructions. Not relevant when you're sitting at flight level 360, but it is relevant when you're flying into airports near mountains and, you know, in sort of more challenging terrain. So you can get the basic ForeFlight subscription, and you can pay an extra $25, I think it is, for synthetic vision. Or if you go to 200, you get synthetic vision as part of that $200 package. And what that does is it gives you well, a number of features, but one of the key ones is that on this map view, when you've set up your approach into wherever you're going, it will allow you to choose an instrument approach and then stick that on there, and it will actually show on the map, amazingly. If you look at some of my other videos where I had access to that feature, you'll see for yourselves how useful that can be. Also, it means if you're looking, say we're shooting the ILS into SMF and you're on this page, your aircraft will actually appear on this chart as well, which is just incredibly handy. Very accurate as well. So it's a fantastic tool for situational awareness if you are flying for real. And it's also great as a training aid. So there's 3 levels of subscription. The 3rd level gives you advanced planning information for various range of aircraft. So if you're a GA aircraft owner, you'd probably go for the Pro or the Pro or the Premium pack, so the $200 or the $300 package. As a lowly simulator user, I just go for the basic package at this point, but having tasted the charts on maps feature, which I've just described, it's actually quite a struggle going backwards. So just looking at the where we are at the moment, what I'm going to do is just zoom in slightly. That's probably enough. So we hit a point where we're just hitting tons of fixes en route. So the map is potentially getting quite crowded there. So let's go through some of the features on the basic package. So you've got your airport information, gives you everything you need to know about the airport, including things like NOTAMs. Let's check in there. So at SMF, the ILS 16 left and right is out of service from 18th of March until 19th of March. Okay, so that would be today. ILS 16 left's out of service 19th of March till the 19th. Okay, so they're obviously taking them down for maintenance or something. You can also see services available at the airport. So this is really useful if you're a real GA pilot. And then the basic information of the airport from the government, I guess. And then the More tab, which gives you the opening hours and everything else about it. All the information to the right is less important, really, importance to a simulated pilot. But the key things are you've got all your frequencies there, you've got your weather, which is really important, and what's nice about it, you've got the METAR, for example, in the coded format at the top in green, and then you've got a natural language version of that below it. So if you're a simulator pilot and you struggle with that, then it's quite useful. Also the area forecast, so going out to Sacramento, just see how it's going to change en route. Well, not a lot by the looks of it. So a very light wind possibly might change direction, but 4 knots, even a tailwind would be fine. One thing I am going to do, I'm just going to break off from my description of ForeFlight a minute, and I think we could put 400 now as cruise level, as I promised earlier. And then request from ATC, grant and fly. 400, there we go. And it is more of a laboured climb at this altitude. And of course what that will do is set our top of climb, reset that, and also our top of descent, because we're obviously descending from a higher point, take longer, so that top of descent bring it closer to us. Sometimes you get a message that your altitude is not feasible, cannot do the flight level. So at that point what happens is you end up having to choose a lower level. Just a message from ForeFlight, just reminding us of the ATIS KSMF 12675. So just check I have that set. 12675 is set, so that's no problem. We normally get the ATIS quite late in the flight, which is a little bit frustrating. So sometimes I end up picking that up early from ForeFlight. It's not normally far out, and anyway, as I say, ForeFlight's values are normally accurate, but of course, you know, we're in the simulator, so actually the simulator is the authority in this case. So we're not far out now, so we should be able to start making note of some of this information, because we'll be landed before we actually get to Sacramento. Just had to switch some lights on there, it's better. So let's have a look at the weather information. 03s are at 4. 10 statute miles broken at 25,000. Altimeter 3022. And what I would normally do is stick that into my second altimeter. Use this kind of as a scratch pad. So 3022. So if you don't get anything from the ATIS, then we can go on the basis of ForeFlight's information. So as I say, we have got the wrong airport in the CDU, or I have got the wrong airport in there. For some reason, I think flying towards the SAC, VOR, and there being a KSAC airport, I've just got a little bit confused there, but I'm obviously not able to see the runways I wanted to land on, but it's not a problem. What we are going to do is we'll fly a route to SAC, VOR, and then that is actually the entry point on our ILS procedure at SMF, KSMF, where we really wanted to go. So we don't really need to do anything. When we get to Sacramento, I will fly vectors to the localizer and pick up on the ILS from there. So just back to ForeFlight, so you get your information about the airport there, the runways in use, the length, also the approach course, which is quite useful for setting that up on the procedure. Then you get all of the procedures. You've got the airport diagram we had a look at, you've got the instrument departures, arrivals and approaches. And then if we, for example, decided, well, we might get a 3-4 approach, click on that approach, it comes up in the charts tab. So the first 3 tabs are really the main ones that you use in flight. And if we just temporarily looking at that and don't really want to keep it or add it to our pack of charts, we can just close it and it'll go away. But if you want to add that, we just click the plus sign and that'll add it. Now I already have 3-4 left in there, of course, because that is the approach we're flying, so I'm not going to add that twice. We'll go back to the airports tab. Could be we think, well, maybe we'll do the RNAV approach, so click on that and have a look at that. Okay, for the other runway, 3-4 right, click to add that to the pack. And what you're seeing there is the RNAV 3-4 right, and then just scroll across there. I now can scroll through the different RNAV approaches, so that's the 16 left RNAV approach. I'm going to get that out of the view at the moment. Just go back to our ILS. I just noticed something while I've been chatting to you. We needed to really be in a descent. So let's go down to 15,000. We need to add quite a bit of drag in there. We won't see it that clearly, but quite a lot of spoiler out at the moment. It's probably not the most comfortable descent for passengers, but it certainly has resulted in us flying very efficiently. So nearly 6,000 foot a minute. Getting a warning of sink rate as well. Not recommended. Let's stick the seatbelt sign on. Switch back to map and see where we are.
Okay. Sync rate, sync rate.
So that's the other thing you can do with the ForeFlight map, is you can move the map and just set it up. So I can set it up just to see our approach into Sacramento and then switch off the aeronautical detail. So we just see our plan route and the city and essential information.
Sync rate.
Earth is that? Oh, okay, it's another airport. Yeah, just I thought we were flying formation with another aircraft for a moment. Well, it's amazing how quickly you can descend on this this aircraft. I mean, there's certainly an advantage in staying higher for longer, I don't think this is quite what the airlines would prescribe. I have been on from such flights. So, wraps at in 3 miles, 12,000 we're meant to be at. Well, we're not far off that now. We should be able to make up for the incompetence on my part.
Sync rate, sync rate.
So this is a case where we're approaching the 18,000 transition altitude. We have no information from ATIS, so I'm going to stick 3022 in here. And then altimeter 2, 2992. And then the magic screw. So what have we set? So our descent altitude is 15,000. Probably bring that down a little bit more. Bring it down to 9,000. Alright, let's have a quick look at the chart.
Great.
And the heights in particular, we've got to be at LMAC, so approach fix need to be above 3,400. And it's a fairly short ride from Sacramento to that point, so we'll probably need to be 4,000 or so. It's the SAC VOR. So this is where the vertical navigation is going to screw up a little bit, because it is it's got us down as 0 at SAC. So just slowing up because we're coming down below 10,000. And let's go through the process here and stick the lights on, and put the logo and the light on as well. Let's see where we are. So we can't really rely on the flight management computer at this point. We're going to go to LIN, and then to SAC we have about 34 miles. So that's fine. That's fine.
Sacramento Intl information Charlie 800 Zulu weather. Wind light and variable. Visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 25,000 broken. Temperature 8. Dew point 3. Altimeter 3023. Arriving runways 16 left. 16 right. Departing runways 16 left. 16 right. Advise on initial contact you have Charlie.
I think you're joking. I think I'm going to fly all the way around to 16 left or right. Okay, so Charlie's the information. So if I had the Pro ForeFlight pack, what I would now see is the approach chart superimposed on the map. And do have a look at my other videos if you'd like to see an example of that. What I'm going to do is set the heading for 303, which is the heading out of the SAC VOR. Okay. And we are now on altitude hold, so we'll stay there for the moment. And what did I say? About 4,000 at SAC. So now we're on altitude hold. We're not going to put it back into VNav because I'm going to be flying this semi-manually, or at least controlling that through the autopilot. Keep the speed at 240, but probably want to slow that up to around 210 as we approach the localizer. So this is a very good example where that would be, that maps on the charts on the maps view would be really handy. So 16 miles gults to Sac. We are 240, about 264 ground speed. So we're just a little bit over 4 miles a minute, about 4.5 miles a minute. So this allows us 3 minutes between gults and SAC. 3 minutes, and we've got to drop down to, well, let's go down to 4,000 feet in that time, so we need to lose 5. So we need about 1,500, say 2,000 feet a minute would be the descent profile. So when we get to gults, I'm going to descend to 4,000 at 2,000 feet a minute, because we'll also want to be slowing up a little bit there. So runway at Sacramento is about 8,500 foot, that's fine. Probably put the auto brake on. Number 2 will be fine. Just have another look where we are. So the terminal's more or less central on that, so we should be fine. We don't need to go too aggressive on that. So flight management computer is used purely at this point for lateral navigation. All the vertical navigation, the height and the speed control is under my control at this point. So let's go down to 4,000 and we will put vertical speed and get that down to 2,000 feet a minute. And we'll go down to 4,000. Might need to bring a little bit of spoiler in to stop the speed creeping up. We certainly don't want to be too high on the speed. And you see the green arc as well on the navigation display, shows us where we'll reach that height. So if you wanted to, we could keep an eye on that and we could just back off the descent a little bit, and that will just etch that out a little bit there. So that's probably about right. That makes sense. So not descending quite as quickly. Okay, that is not the ident for Sacramento. 3-4 left. That is now. Okay, so that's okay. Let's switch it off before it drives us crazy. And what we'll do is continue down to 3,500. And just bring the speed down a little bit as well. Look at that first stage of flapping, really. And we can switch the CD off because we're not using that at all at this point. This first stage in, a little bit of air brake still. And when we get to SAC, switch over to heading mode. 303 is our heading, very slight right turn. Switch that on now because it's trying to fly to KSAC at that point. So now on heading mode, and we'll switch the localizer on. So we've identified that successfully. So that should be coming in from the left. Let's bring the speed down a bit. And bring another stage of flap in. So we need to be above 3,400, which we are for LMAC. And that's the point the glide slope should come in. There's the localizer. Localizer is locked. Right turn, you can see the airport there. You can see the glide slope coming in as well. So let's switch to approach mode. And we'll set 180 on the approach. And gear can come down. And another stage of flap. So just confirmed 3-4 left, and you can see very, very clearly. And we'll continue 5 miles. No, that's not quite right. Just past LMAC, and we're descending on the glide slope. It's probably about 10 miles or so. Looking good. And what we could do is set up the details for the missed approach, which is to 2,000. That would be a left turn to 320. I'm just setting this up for the missed in the event that we need to go missed. You can see us now on the map. Let's switch the aeronautical view on. And the other thing we can have is the VREF 139. It's because I'm bringing the spoilers out a little bit, doesn't like it. Another stage of flap coming in. So land 3 is the annunciator for the auto land, but I will do this manually, I think, despite the fate of this flight so far. Another stage of flap, and we can bring this down to 139. That's a reference speed for the threshold. Let's come out a little bit. Okay, switch the autopilot off, autothrottle coming off as well. So now very, very gentle movements to keep us on track and descent.
500.
So wind's very, very slightly from the left. Almost down the runway, 1 knot.
Minimums.
Okay, we'll land.
$100.
There's 139 over the threshold.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
This wheel down, versus deployed. The ForeFlight will switch into the ground plan view when we get below a certain speed. 60 knots. There it goes. It's not such a useful view though, actually. I'd like to turn that off. Okay, clear of the runway. Set the brakes. So basically switch off anything unnecessary, so your dampers are not needed. The cargo heat no longer needed. Actually, I meant to switch. That was on continuous, I think, the whole flight. APU, well, let's start that now. And everything else is absolutely fine up there. So, as I say, when ForeFlight switches to the chart view, it's not as quite as useful as this one, because here it's kind of like an overlay on the map, and it can monitor our position as we taxi in. So let's do that. Just take the brakes off and let's turn auto brakes off. The other thing to do actually is switch the transponder to standby. And what we'll do, we still have the flaps out, so as soon as we get moving, we'll retract those as well. So it's going to be a right turn here. Sacramento International. It's quite nice actually. I've flown in here before. I think what we'll do is we'll go to Yankee, so past Whiskey, which is this first turn. And then very soon after, got our Yankee turn. Is that it there? Just bear with me a minute. Yeah, that's it. And sooner than I thought. Yep. So this is just the stock Sacramento International. Some of the stock airports looking really good. I'm going to say this is definitely one of them. Where can we go? One of those should be fine. Maybe actually that one next to the southwest. Let's just come out of the aircraft a bit. I'll park next to the, is it Japan Air? Yep, JAL Express, park next to them. Nice to be able to do this. Oops. That'll do us. Okay, just make sure AP's running. Need that really on that second screen. So you see it's there, that's good. And we can close down. Okay, so that's the power switching over to the APU generator. And what we can do is actually just get the chocks in as well, actually. Chocks, gate config, and we'll get high power and air. And hydraulics off. Engine generators are off. Switch over to external power now, you see it flickering there. And we can turn our taxi lights off, keep logo, door unlocked, cargos are off, fuel we can leave on, seatbelt sign can come off, and packs are on, turn the air bleed off. And as we've got external power, we can switch off the APU and let that spool down. That'll take a while. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and, assuming that we have a jetway. Let's try and find the aircraft now. There it is. So the jetway hasn't moved in, but we have to imagine it has. the door on the left. And we can unload passengers. Okay, so parked at Sacramento International, more or less ready to hand over to the next crew. It was a bit of an eventful flight, partly unexplained stuff, partly my incompetence, but anyway, we got here safely and look forward to the next one. So featuring the Boeing 767 from Flight Factor and ForeFlight, the navigation tool for planning and in-flight situational awareness. Look forward to welcoming you aboard again in the near future. Thanks for your company today. See you again.